Story 1. I don't know. I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, so anyone who ever needed instant responses from me faded away long ago during the time when I would forget I had a phone for weeks. I am not a rewarding acquaintance for people who need constant attention. Story 2. I do not. They get muted or blocked as needed. Phones are meant to be a convenience for both parties, not an electronic leash. If that fact does not work for them, that is not my problem. Story 3. I call them back. It's brief and uncomfortable, filled with and come on, we don't have all day. If you want a reply right now, you will get one. Story 4. A friend recently confronted me. Each section represents the other person. I'm paraphrasing, of course. We need to talk about why we haven't been communicating more lately. Sorry, I'm working right now. I have 2 projects I need to finish today. Okay. But we really need to discuss this as soon as possible. When can we meet to talk about this? I think we're drifting apart, and we need to address that. I heard 3 beeps in a row and saw a flood of texts, so I turned my phone over to stop the notifications. After finishing my projects, I checked my phone 2 hours later and noticed another text 15 minutes after the last 3. Well, I guess I got my answer. Story 5. Automatically sends a pre-written message on the second text after 5 minutes. The person you are texting is driving. A safe person does not text and drive. You will receive a response after the recipient has stopped driving. Until then, your message will not be displayed. Story 6. I respond when I receive a text. Many people pretend to be busy even when they are not. Ironically, these are often the same individuals who get upset if you are in the shower or doing something else. I am likely to tell them to stop overwhelming me with messages or I will block them. If I receive any attitude, I block them without warning. I have removed many negative influences from my life in this way. Story 7. These threads often seem to suggest that people believe they should not be tied to their phones, which is an absurd notion. It feels as though they are offended by the idea of texting back and forth rapidly. Story 8. Set boundaries early. If someone consistently sends me unwanted messages, I either mute the conversation or reply on my own time. Story 9. I keep telling my mom that no matter how many times she texts in a row, it only counts as ignoring her once. Story 10. Inform them that you will respond when you have the time, and that sending multiple messages will only delay the processing of their request further. Story 11. It depends on how extreme they get. A couple of times, I had to snap back and remind them that I have a life that includes work and rest after work. If they can't handle that, they can move on. Story 12. As a former manager, I told staff, email is a standard 2 to 3 day business practice for keeping people informed. Text messaging is for direct communication, but it might take some time to get a response. Calling is reserved for emergencies or for discussing extensive information after texting to confirm it's a good time to talk. For a major emergency, a call twice in succession will get me out of bed quickly. Story 13. It usually doesn't bother me because I respond promptly as a sign of respect for others and their time. If I miss a message, I reply as soon as possible, often with an apology for the delay, and then I answer their question. What frustrates me is when I text someone and they never respond. Story 14. It really depends on why they are looking for a quick reply. There is nothing I dislike more than a friend or colleague messaging me that they are going through difficult times, need help, or want to talk, and then not responding for hours. I find it frustrating when they are vague and I am left trying to figure out what is going on. If you send me a text to start a conversation and then do not reply after I respond, especially if I have to reply multiple times, then you are the problem. When you send me a text, I try to respond promptly. It's a matter of respect. If you are just checking in or saying hello, let me know so I do not expect further replies. It is not a difficult concept. Story 15. I have experienced this situation before, although they reached out to me. My friend has extremely poor texting habits. He will start a conversation, ask a question, and then not respond for 3 to 7 business days. This was particularly frustrating when we were working on projects together, as I often wouldn't hear from him until it was too late. My sister behaves in a similar way. Many people have mentioned this, but I significantly deprioritize their messages. I turn off notifications and categorize our conversations as non-urgent. Story 16. It takes about 30 seconds to respond. Say, I'm a little busy. Let me get back to you later today. Story 17. Either ignore them entirely or take my time replying, depending on whether it's someone like my boss whom I do have to reply to at some point. Story 18. Mute and encourage them to seek therapy for any issues that make them feel entitled to immediate responses from others. Story 19. I just let them. I used to get very anxious and drop everything because I'm a people pleaser, but I realized if they really needed me, they would call. So, I now check my phone and respond to unimportant messages maybe every hour or so. Story 20. Thankfully, I don't have this issue. If it is something urgent, then I will reply as soon as possible or call. If it is not, they can wait. Story 21. Hold your boundary. Being bullied like that needs to be addressed, and consequences should be enforced. Start out firm yet polite, and clearly express that you do not appreciate being pressured in this way and that they should not do it again. Anything less than "I understand," "I'm sorry," is to be dismissed, and you should reiterate your boundary. After that, disengage and let them know you will re-engage if they learn to treat you better. Story 22. This reminds me of my friend. I text him every few days to see if he wants to hang out, but he never replies. This makes our conversation appear as though I am trying to annoy and spam him. It may not be directly related, but it's still on my mind. Story 23. Ignore them or call depending on the situation. Ironically, many of these people are afraid to answer a phone call, I find. Story 24. That is my daughter. She just wants money, and if I do not want to give her any, I reply with a simple no. She stops after that. Story 25. Depends. When I say something, do they continue anyway? If so, I will probably mute them, maybe permanently. You all worry me sometimes with how simple communication is not the first option. Story 26. Give them a fair warning. If it's important, please call me. If not, I will respond to your message in my own time. If you continue to send excessive messages, I will mute you. Do not make empty promises. You need to follow through if they persist. Story 27. Hold tight and reply when I'm ready. Sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's not. If necessary, ignore them. If necessary, mute them. If necessary, block them. Story 28. I tell them that spam indicates hysteria and then ask them directly, is this a hysterical moment for you? When they say no, I tell them to stop acting that way. Send one text. I will respond when it is convenient for me. Thank you. Story 29. Tell them to have some patience, as I have a life away from them, and I am not at their beck and call. Story 30. If it is someone you know, reply with "my phone is for my convenience, not yours. I will get back to you when I have time, and sending multiple messages will only delay my response. Then do not respond until at least 20 minutes after the last message. Add an additional 20 minutes for each repeated message. So if they send 5 urgent texts, do not respond until 100 minutes after the last message. You need to teach them that spamming does not yield a response. If it is a stranger, just block them. Story 31. I will reply when I can. Please ignore any other texts in between, even if they escalate or express frustration. Just respond as you would have to the first message, as if everything in between never happened. Story 32. I respond on my schedule, not theirs. Interestingly, they are often the ones who leave you waiting for hours as well. Story 33. The more I will not reply, restricted or blocked. I will reply and check messages whenever I want. Case closed. Story 34. What works for me is ignoring them and replying when I am ready. I do not explain myself for the late reply. You do not owe anyone an explanation for being busy. Story 35. The first couple of times I mute them for a few hours to see if they get the hint. After that, it's a block. Story 36. As an adult, I have never dealt with this, probably because of the younger generation. I would simply tell them that they need to allow me 24 hours to respond to a text message, unless we are conversing. Additionally, they should not take it personally. Story 37. I explain to my friends and new acquaintances that if they message me, I will assume it's not important and will respond whenever I have a chance. If you call me, it should be an emergency or something serious. Exceptions apply. Story 38. I don't check my phone for spam while I'm making lunch or watching a movie. I'm just enjoying myself and I'm not sure what they are doing. Story 39. Since they are not respecting my inner peace, I will do the same by not replying. Respect begets respect, people. Learn how to ignore this kind of person unless there is an evident emergency. Story 40. I have never had anyone do that. However, my phone is on vibrate all day, so I would just ignore them until I had time to respond to their initial text. Story 41. I usually just reply at that point. Sometimes I need a reminder when a message is read and forgotten. It's not that deep. Story 42. I would at least acknowledge them rather than ignore them. This way, they would not think that I am ignoring them. Story 43. Thankfully, I don't have to deal with these individuals too often. That's also by design. Pull out your phone and see 5 missed messages. Simple responses like, working, in a meeting, or other activities. Sometimes they are followed by, I'll catch up with you later. If it's something simple, or you're thinking up a response, then all you need is one word, standby. This is usually enough to silence 99% of individuals. What you're doing in a roundabout way is setting a boundary and acknowledging their texts at the same time. Then you continue with whatever it is you were doing. For the remaining 1%, if you are going to flood my phone with messages or call me repeatedly, then something important must be happening. Is the other person just seeking attention? Are they trying to draw you into their drama? Or are they simply selfish individuals who think you are at their beck and call? Regardless, you are likely better off distancing yourself from this type of person. Story 44. Recently, I dealt with a situation where I waited over a day to respond to unwanted messages. I sent a cheeky reply, suggesting that if it was urgent, they should call, but otherwise, I'm not always attached to my phone. Honestly, it really annoyed me, and I've taken several steps back from that friendship since then. How can someone disturb me on the phone I pay for? Story 45. I am a slow and unreliable texter on purpose. It is important to me that I am not always plugged in or expected to react immediately to every little thing. So I just don't. I am very upfront about this, and so far it's been fine. There might be a couple of people who weren't okay with my slower approach to communication, but if so, they are among the people I don't talk to anymore. This is fine as it saves us both from annoyance. Story 46. Respond using a separate text for each word of your reply. If they arrive out of order, so much the better. Story 47. Someone called me, and when I didn't pick up, they texted me 3 times in a row at 8 a.m. Since I'm a night owl, it was way too early. I ended up telling them I couldn't communicate with them due to other issues, but this was the final straw. I texted them that I was done and blocked them. Story 48. Never had anyone pressure me into replying unless it was an actual emergency that required an immediate response. If it's not a real emergency, they are being controlling. Story 49. They will never receive a response. The more you contact me, the less chance I have of getting back to you. They are digging their own grave. Story 50. On iPhone, you can silence groups or individuals. Let them send messages without notifying you. Respond later when you want. Story 51. Tell them that just because I have a phone available all the time, it doesn't mean I am available all the time. I will respond when I have time. If they can't respect that I am not available 24/7, they will be muted. If it continues, they will be muted. Story 52. I once had someone like that. It was not even a significant other, just an acquaintance. I proceeded to block her after she started sending spam messages, and then spam calling while I was in a meeting for something that was neither urgent nor important. Story 53. Tell them it is not convenient or something. Or tell them to calm down if they're a friend. It's one of the great joys of texting You don't have to actually talk to them, and you can take your time. Story 54. It's my phone and I will answer it when I choose to, if at all. If they cannot respect that, then their message may never get answered. Story 55. My mother does this and then calls if I don't answer within 30 seconds of the spam. I tease her about it. Other than that, I mute my phone. Story 56. I made myself unavailable on purpose after my cousin kept sending me messages. I changed my status to working and started responding only during specific hours. She was upset at first, but honestly, it was the best decision ever. Now she sends one text and waits like a normal person. Story 57. I have seen your message. I will respond when I have the time. For each message asking the same question, I will add 1 hour to my response time. I am not at your disposal, and if you continue to treat me this way, I will block this number. Story 58. Block them, then when they ask, tell them why you blocked them. If they cannot change their behavior, keep them blocked until they act appropriately. Problem solved. Story 59. I just got scolded for not replying within 12 hours to a friend's emotional disclosure. I have a lot on my plate. She persisted until I apologized, suggesting that I was dismissing her feelings. She is 35. Story 60. Mute their notifications and do not give in at all costs. Texts are never urgent, in my opinion. If it is an emergency, call. Story 61. Step 1. Can you please refrain from doing that in the future? Step 2. Please stop. I will respond when I can. Step 3. Blocked. Story 62. Tell them you were busy at the time. I had to say that to our neighbor who was calling as I walked in the door with my arms full of groceries. He saw me. He could have walked over and helped. Story 63. I will respond when it is convenient for me. Phone calls and other communication methods are for my convenience, and I disregard anything else. Story 64. Simple behaviorism. A prompt response reinforces the spam, so do not reinforce it. Essentially, do not participate in the behavior you want to see disappear. Reply in your own time exactly as you would normally. This is not only an effective method based on psychological principles, but it is also a simple solution that requires no increased mental energy from you. Story 65. I don't care how much they spam me. I'll only reply when I feel like it. If it keeps happening, I just tell them I'm not that reactive online. If they continue, they get blocked. Story 66. I inform people that there is a minimum delay before I respond to text messages. Each follow-up resets the clock. Continued texting results in no reply. Story 67. I always say whenever someone calls or texts you, it is a request for your attention, not an obligation. Story 68. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb when I don't want to be disturbed. Some people have become frustrated, but they have to learn that I'm not always reachable. Story 69. I keep my phone on Do Not Disturb. They see the notification, and I will see their text when I check my messages. Story 70. My dad takes 11 days to answer a text sometimes, but I must respond within an hour or it feels like the end of the world. Story 71. Unless I'm related to them, I do not engage with them because I refuse to tolerate their behavior. If I am related to them, I put them on mute and handle interactions when I have the time. Story 72. Remind them my phone is for my convenience. It's not a form of bondage. It does not mean I am always available. I will reply when it suits me. Story 73. I don't understand people who do this. Before cell phones, you would just leave a message and wait. Just because someone has a mobile phone doesn't mean they are obligated to answer when you want them to. I have had someone do this and explain to them that I will get back to them when I have time. If they keep doing it, I can and will block their number. Story 74. Have you considered replying to them? Everyone has a phone with them all the time. If you genuinely didn't notice the text and see a string of messages from them, let them know you just saw the message and that you were busy. If it's someone who is consistently annoying about expecting a reply within 10 seconds, be an adult and talk to them about it. It's not that hard. Story 75. The only people I will reply to immediately, no matter what, are my wife, children, and grandchildren. Everyone else can wait until I am not busy with something else. Story 76. Standard message reply times. Phone call from a known contact as soon as possible. Phone call from a stranger. No voicemail. Typically never. Either of the above with voicemail, listen to the voicemail first, then return the call if needed. Text from a known contact. Within 24 hours is polite. 12 hours if the text contains a direct question. Text from a stranger variable. Social email within 3 to 4 days is polite. Work email within 48 hours or sooner. Computer message, Discord, Steam, etc. Between friends while both are visibly online within 1 hour is polite. Nothing should ever demand an immediate response unless you are an emergency first responder or actively communicating during a previously discussed time period. No one should be expected to drop everything at a moment's notice to respond to a message that contains just a picture and an emoji. Story 77. It depends. My friends often send me random thoughts or videos, but they do not expect me to reply immediately. However, I sometimes forget to text back, so when someone sends me messages frequently, it helps me remember that they are within reach. Story 78. I would block the person and unblock them when I have time to reply. If blocking isn't possible, I would at least mute the person and return when I am ready. Story 79. Mute the conversation. Usually, friendships with those types don't last long for me because I am a low-energy friend. Story 80. Depends. Are you reading their messages but only responding when you want something? Day 1. Shares picture. I think this is hilarious. Day 6. Oh my gosh. That's so funny. I wonder what the bright yellow dot was about. Oh hey. Do you have a minute? Be sure they are not merely responding to you before you set some boundaries. It's a pattern I have seen often enough in my life, usually with young people, such as teenagers to those in their mid-20s. This may be because they are still learning social graces, such as avoiding leaving others unread. If it is not this, then boundaries are in order. The person may be insecure. If you are considering dating them, it is a significant red flag with alarms blaring, rotating red lights, and a person muttering in a foreign language about the end of the world. Story 81. Do not reinforce the behavior by responding to their barrage. When they ask later why you did not respond, tell them you do not respond to being flooded with messages. Story 82. I reply when I can. I silence my phone if I am annoyed by notifications. My expensive phone is for my convenience, not for the convenience of anyone who wants to reach me immediately. Story 83. I have never experienced that, but I keep my phone on Do Not Disturb and respond to texts when I choose to. If someone has a problem with that, it's easy to say, I'm trying to use my phone less, so I'll reply to your texts when I can. If they have an issue with that response, they can resolve it on their own or with someone else. That is not something I would argue or debate. Story 84. A lot of these responses are extreme. You have control over whether or not you interact with someone and when you do so. Do not allow anyone to manipulate you into responding unless it is genuinely time-sensitive or an agreement was made beforehand. Just because immediate responses are possible does not mean everyone is entitled to them. Use your best judgment. If a quick response is required or expected due to the nature of the relationship, such as employers, daycares, or business transactions, then yes, you should reply in a timely manner. If it is just a friend who is impatient, respond whenever you would have anyway. No one is going to come after you for asserting reasonable boundaries with your time. Story 85. I'm busy. I'll text you when I'm available. If they keep sending messages, put your phone in Do Not Disturb mode. Story 86. Block their number, try to remember to reply and unblock in a while, whether it is an hour or a day, whenever I feel like the point got across. Story 87. I use the hide alert option on those text messages, so I don't see their messages when I'm too busy to respond. Story 88. You are not a hotline for emergencies. You have not established this hotline to interrupt your activities to address public inquiries. Typically, I do not respond to non-urgent matters during the day. Once I have finished my tasks, I prepare a cup of tea and take some time to reply to all messages. Story 89. With Apple products, you can intentionally turn off notifications from specific text numbers. That is what I would recommend. If it still poses a problem, you can always block the number completely. However, first, communicate that the volume of texts is unacceptable and that you will check for their messages once a day. If they do not respect that, block them if possible. If it is a family member, turning off notifications would be the easiest solution, and you can respond when you have time. Story 90. Many people have a problem with this, but that's life. If you expect me to be waiting for a small beep or vibration that I might miss, rather than up to 8 rings, you are mistaken. Story 91. I called them and said some things that were very rude, and then said more rude things before hanging up. It worked every time. Story 92. I tell them that if it's something important, they should call me. Texts are not a priority in my life, and I reply when I see them and have time. If they need an immediate response, then they should call. Story 93. Wait until they try to provoke your response through anger. Once they make negative comments, you have the freedom to say whatever you want, and it feels great. Story 94. For every text you send me without a response, I will add another hour to my response time. Story 95. I feel that many of you do not reply in a reasonable amount of time intentionally. It seems petty and childish. I have a sister who consistently took at least a day to respond to my texts. Yet when I was with her, she was always looking at her phone. I haven't seen or spoken to her in 5 years. Story 96. I have someone who will do anything other than the conventional means to contact me. I ask to be notified or speak through Discord, and they spam me on Steam or try to start a voice chat there. I request to keep conversations to text, but I'm constantly interrupted. This person doesn't take no for an answer, and you wonder why I don't respond? Story 97. Tell them to meditate and practice deep breathing during the session. Also, remind them that unless someone's life is being threatened, the situation is not that serious. Story 98. You don't 90% of the time. When you're unfortunate enough to have parents like that and you're living under their rules, you answer them before they report you missing. Don't date people who behave this way either. Story 99. Reply when you are ready. Otherwise, their bullying behavior will only get worse over time. Set the boundary and establish it early. If they are not willing to adhere to it, inform them that they will be blocked if their behavior continues. If they do not listen, block them. For your information, my first wife did this to me often, and it is one of the many reasons she is no longer my wife. Story 100. I have an entire decision tree for this scenario. If I see their text and really want to talk to them for some reason, I take some time for myself. If I still want to talk to them with a clear mind, I relax for a moment. I usually do not want to talk to them after the first couple of moments. Story 101. I tell them to stop and set boundaries. If someone sends me spam text messages, I have no problem putting them in timeout with a temporary block. Story 102. Mute their chat. It's that simple. Now that I've gotten a little older, I don't care about verification badges. Yes, I have read your messages. I might reply, but on my own terms. I decide how to prioritize my time, not you. Story 103. You can put your phone on silent or block calls and messages, giving yourself a break. Remind others that you have a life and it doesn't revolve around answering text messages. Unless someone is seriously hurt, there is no reason for urgent messages. Story 104. I have been consistently telling people directly to stop spamming, but they haven't listened. They send me 20 messages, and when I don't read them the next day, they send me 40 messages. I still don't read them. On the third day, they forward the 20 messages again. This is a relative I can't easily block, so I don't engage. Only when you ask caring questions will they keep sharing more about themselves and seek your attention. I simply like some messages and reply with one line. Read them all. This means I don't care or don't have much opinion about what was said, but I care enough to respond. This is an ongoing challenge for me. Story 105. Why do you even bother with WhatsApp if you are not going to reply? It only takes 10 to 60 seconds to write a message. My pet peeve is when someone has been online on WhatsApp and hasn't read my message after 4 to 6 hours. I understand not wanting to spam them, but how long does it take to reply? Just a few seconds. Story 106. Anyone who does this gets blocked pretty fast by me. The only time I can understand it is in an absolute medical emergency or a concern for someone's safety. You can figure out pretty quickly if it's that situation. Most people I know, including my family and my husband's side of the family, would call if that were the case and not text. My son had a bad habit of this on Facebook Messenger and texting. It was enough that everyone in our immediate family, me, my husband, my daughter, her long-term boyfriend, and one of their grandparents, ended up blocking him at certain points for an extended period of time. The grandparent doesn't really use her phone for texting or calls. It's her emergency phone for when she leaves the house. He would get very nasty if you didn't or couldn't reply immediately. It didn't matter if a person was working, sleeping, or in situations where you can't constantly use phones, like at the cinema, driving, or during a medical appointment. He would start off nice, then devolve into being meaner over time until you replied. I warned him the last time I unblocked him that if he did it again, it would be the final time. I have things to do and other family members besides just him who want to contact me for various reasons. So if he gets blocked again for the same behavior, I would only accept calls going forward. He doesn't call too often. My husband has said the same, and my daughter has the same rule too. My son hasn't done this since with me or my husband. Periodically, he will try with my daughter, but she is in low contact/no contact with him indefinitely at this point, as they have never gotten along. Story 107. I don't take on the responsibility of addressing their insecurities. It's not my job to fix their impatience. If they wonder why I delay my response for a day or two, I explain that I check social media when I have the time and desire to do so. Life is already quite stressful, and I don't want to add to it with notification overload, which is why I always disable notifications. If there is anything urgent, people can always call me, but that's all. Story 108. Sometimes being cruel is being kind. You don't actually have to be cruel or mean to them. You simply need to be straightforward. Hopefully, they will understand and become more patient. Story 109. I'm just being honest. I tell people that they are simply not that important to me. Sometimes I have to take care of things in life, and that means being alone and resting from others. You are not so important that I would give up my valuable personal time for you or anyone else. I worked hard to earn it, and I'm entitled to enjoy it. If you have a problem with me taking care of myself, then you are the kind of person I'm not willing to speak to any longer. You can decide. Either we can be friends and agree to never jump in, or you can admit that you think you deserve to come before my own mental health. Story 110. My phone is on Do Not Disturb, so people with this attitude never get the chance to even ask because it's not important enough for me to care about, unless you are a personal friend whom I've chosen to save in my contacts and given permission to call. Everyone else in the world is already dead to me, so who cares what they think anyway? Story 111. Adjust your phone settings so the other person only sees delivered and not read. Then set up a focus mode on your phone to limit interruptions from texting. Consider it this way. The other person is conditioned to seek gratification from their phone and is eager for the next notification. They experience a sense of pleasure when they receive a text, so they are craving that next message. Story 112. Establish a response time, such as 3 to 4 hours. Since you may not always be on your phone, it is easier for an impatient person to wait a set amount of time rather than an unknown amount of time. Story 113. I love it when people react strongly to trivial matters. In the end, they reveal their true selves and then, after about 4 hours, say sorry, I left my phone at home. What's up? Story 114. Just mute their notifications and respond 24 hours after their last message, informing them how you handle spammers. Story 115. Switch to a messaging form where you can silence the person or turn off notifications for the app without worrying about what you might miss. Story 116. First of all, make sure read receipts are not turned on. My friends and I are very slow to respond to each other. I call it playing ping pong on the moon. Story 117. I'm someone who replies quickly for 2 reasons. One is that I dislike seeing notification bubbles on my phone, and the other is that I enjoy talking to them more than someone else. However, I don't mind if the other person replies more slowly. Story 118. I told my old roommate not to send multiple messages in a row and to stick to one, or at most two. Otherwise, I would disable sound notifications for his texts. He dismissed my request, but he certainly cared when his car was in the shop. He texted me asking for a ride from work, but I was washing my car and my phone did not notify me of his message. Story 119. Explain it to them. Then it is up to them to deal with it. If they need an answer immediately, tell them to use their phone to make a call. Story 120. Nobody pressures you into replying. You either like who you are talking to or you don't. You either feel enthusiasm when you talk to them or annoyance. Which is it? Story 121. It depends. If it's someone I am interested in, I will let them know that I cannot always respond and I will set boundaries. If they do not respect those boundaries, I will remove myself from the situation. However, if it is someone like a boss, manager, or even an acquaintance, I will simply ignore them. You do not dictate my actions. Story 122. If it is something time-sensitive, it is understandable, but I know the texting habits of all my friends, and if they are not displaying their normal patterns, I begin to worry. Story 123. Mute. Let them spam themselves. If someone can't take no or later as an answer, just ignore them. What are they going to do? Crawl out of your phone or computer and chase you? Story 124. I will let them keep talking until they are finished, then I will reply. I respond when I choose to, not when others expect me to. Story 125. Send them 3 dots representing the typing ellipses. Then block them if they harass me into replying, or only voice call them and leave long voicemails that still do not get to the point until they call and ask nicely. Story 126. One warning. I have your text. I am either thinking of a thoughtful reply or busy living in this difficult world. I am not above blocking you unless you give me time to respond at my convenience. This is my only warning. Story 127. Received. I will respond at 5 p.m. after I finish this important deliverable and my exam. Story 128. I put them on mute permanently. Almost no one is entitled to my time and immediate attention. If there is a legitimate emergency, then that is a different matter. Story 129. Tell them to leave me alone. Having a phone does not mean people have instant or constant access to me, my time, or my attention. Story 130. Send them an image, especially one that contrasts with your own color. That will silence them. Story 131. I will respond on my schedule, not yours. Keep up the spam, and you will find out just how busy I can make my schedule. Story 132. What do you mean by spamming you? Anyway, I tend to ignore things like that. I don't even block. I'm skilled at not engaging or entertaining people who are causing trouble. Good luck trying to outsmart someone who is already experienced at that. Story 133. I may miss things occasionally, so a follow-up message is welcome. If you send too many messages, I may begin to ignore you intentionally. Story 134. It hasn't happened yet, but I wouldn't have a problem reminding someone that I pay for my phone solely for my convenience. Story 135. Block. And ask who? I didn't understand it. Your piece is too important to give away to someone. If it is someone you do not want to block, turn down the notifications and check it when you have the energy. Story 136. I block or mute such calls. If the matter is urgent, please call me. However, if you call me about a non-urgent issue, I will be frustrated for not having received a text first, and for having to pick up the call thinking it was an emergency. People often struggle to differentiate between urgent and non-urgent matters. They also overlook that not everyone has the same schedule or amount of free time. I might be deep in a challenging negotiation at work, trying to recover a significant amount of revenue that a bankrupt company previously lost. In that moment, I am focused on evaluating options and outcomes in my mind. Suddenly, my phone rings, forcing me to excuse myself for a moment to answer, only to find out the call is about whether a specific person should get veneers, as they are unsure about the long-term decision. Story 137. You mute it. When they call you or show up and demand to know why you haven't responded, remind them that the last time you needed a quick answer to a question, they ghosted you for a month. From now on, if it's really important, they need to call you. Otherwise, you will just ignore them. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.